So during this time of change, it really did sort of put us all to test. And I would love to just hear, what does, resiliency mean to you? What does that word mean, and what does that look like?
That's a really important word for the past year. I have a mechanical engineering background, so when I think about the word resiliency, I think about it from a materials standpoint. So we oftentimes, in studying materials, their ability to return to normalcy when they're stressed is a quality of a product. And so when I think about resiliency, I think about the ability to go through the challenges and to be bent or to be stretched or used in a certain way, and then to be able to return to its original quality or into a very usable quality. It's been a really difficult year for a lot of people. Today marks 1 year from the tornadoes that ripped through Nashville and Putnam County and West Tennessee and killed dozens of people. And just, that was a horrific event. 2 days later, first COVID case in the state, which led to an enormous amount of difficulty for so many people, which led to, after COVID, the most rapid decline in America's economy, which led to the most rapid rise in unemployment in the state's history. All of that uncertainty led to civil unrest and all that occurred through protests, both good and bad. It's been a really hard year for a lot of people, and resiliency. And I had to keep this in mind and frankly, as a guy who hadn't been in this job very long. Really, I'd been in here for 1 year, basically, when all this stuff started happening. I found myself thinking about how it is that you continue to move forward with those things that you know that people are counting on you to do in your organization, in the positions that you're in your family, in your relationships. How do you continue to function like a piece of like a metal or a material would function as the way it's supposed to, in spite of the fact that it is stressed or strained or pulled, that it still carries out its function? Kind of that's what I think about and thought through oftentimes in this last year, is not to lose focus on what it is that we're supposed to be about, and what it is that matters, and what it is that will get us through this, and what it is that we want to look like on the backside of this. And don't lose sight of that, and don't be pulled to the right or left by all of the distractions that come with enormous strain and enormous challenge. And that's true in your company if you go through a hard time, or which many have been through this past year, in your personal life. Resiliency is very important to remind ourselves that it's important that we pursue resiliency so that we can make it through.
How do you build a system to create innovation? I'd love to hear what you've done at Lee Company and the state.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think innovation, by the way, is probably one of the primary keys to sustainability of an organization. Innovation is a key to the ability for state government, I think, to serve Tennesseans in changing days. So if we're not innovative, then we will fail to serve, and a company will fail, period. I think innovation comes with creating a culture around you that empowers people, and that, what the governor's position is one that requires an enormous group of folks around them in order to execute on all the things that our administration wants to get done. So I can have ideas about things, but because of the scope of the job, I can't execute on any of those. It requires a really good team. And frankly, what really works well is when I can say, I kind of have this vision for this or that. And then someone says, I've got some ideas about how we could do things differently in order to accomplish that. I really think innovation comes with creating an environment of, people, and creating an environment that allows people to be innovative, and they're empowered to be innovative, and they're tasked with that, and you give them authority to operate. I've always been a person who likes to let people work within their own passions, so long as it doesn't run astray from what the vision of the enterprise. But yeah, creating a culture that lets people do that.
Report card talking about, and what I wanted to do is compare and contrast how we were performing in 2019. And then, as you guys know, all of next week, the world truly stopped for us, being the second week of March of 2020. But you can see that in 2019, we announced and incented 100 plus projects, about 14,000 jobs, and 3.3 billion of private capital investment. In 2020, you can see that we really did not lose a lot of momentum. And I think that was a byproduct of being open for business. We just had to, the governor talked about resiliency. We all know what that looks like. We did everything we could to create as few disruptions as possible. And you can see that we didn't have as bad of a year as I think we had anticipated. Nonetheless, we were on par with 2019. So, and just I'll say that 2021 looks much better as well. A couple of great projects that you'll recognize. These are wins that we were fortunate. General Motors is now going to build their Cadillac Lyriq. That's their large initiative for EVs. And General Motors announced about 2 months ago that they're going to spend about $2 billion at Spring Hill. And of course, Governor Lee has said, Bobby, day one, we need to protect our automotive ecosystem. That's probably our largest advanced manufacturing GDP driver, and that being the automotive sector. And you can see there that General Motors, that was a big win for us. Amazon, these are, again, all these are global brands. We've now dropped our third e-fulfillment center that we've recruited, one in Memphis, one in Mount Juliet, and then more recently, last month, we announced with Amazon a third e-fulfillment center over in Blount County, which is right outside of Knoxville. And then recently, we landed Facebook. This is an $800 million project in Gallatin, Sumner County. And while it's not a whole host of jobs, it is an enormous CapEx. And then you can see a couple of the other ones. Smile Direct is here in Nashville, a great big disruptor of the dental industry, orthodontic industry. So we've been successful there. You guys know about Ramsey, and of course McKee Foods down in Chattanooga.
What initiatives, and I think you with the video and what you've talked about a little bit just now, what initiatives are happening in Tennessee to capture the innovative companies that are moving from cities like San Francisco, New York City, and Texas and Florida are doing a great job with Austin and Miami of capturing these innovative companies that are moving. I know you mentioned headquarters and things like that are moving. Are there specific initiatives in that little more innovative tech industry that are being done to capture those?
Ben, great question. And the short answer is absolutely. And specifically where Tennessee has played, I think, a significant role is in the recruiting of tech talent. That will be the future of the success of our state. And that's the ability to recruit technology talent. And what's interesting is every company today has a technology strategy. I don't care what the company does. And so as part of our conversation, specifically recruiting, there are no less than 4 or 5 really great companies that are, again, technology focused, that are looking at Tennessee to just move from the West Coast. And I can say, and again, prior businesses, 2 of the companies I worked for, we had a California presence. And let me just be very clear, it is the most business unfriendly state, not in the US, but on the globe. And so, as you can imagine, when you look at their tax structure, and now they're looking at this wealth tax, and then you look at the cost of living, and you look at those major cities where you have this enormous amount of talent and all of this capital, and they're doing everything they can to create just more wind share to make it an untenable position. So we are actually, if you said, Bobby, where is the most activity? It's the West Coast looking to come east. Specifically, we're recruiting our share companies. And then when I think of the East Coast, Florida by far, you're right. That's where a lot of the money management teams and companies are looking for a whole host of good reasons. And you're right, Texas, they have probably to date won more than their fair share. I can think of the Oracle HQ reload to Austin. I can think of the Hewlett Packard reload from the West Coast over to Houston. And then, of course, several other great companies and great brands. Now, what's interesting, Ben, and I'll just wrap up this question, so much of this is about brands. And what I mean by that is our state, the way we look at it, we're judged by the brands that call Tennessee home. And so there's a lot of follow the leadership mentality out there. And so when I think of the tech companies and I think of Facebook, I think of Amazon, I think of our friends at Google and the like, we continue to deliver our share of wins. And we're going to continue to focus on those kinds of companies. But like you said, Bobby, the inventory for tech talent is modest. I think that's going to be changing here in 2021, sir. And then the HQ relocation. Ladies and gentlemen, you know the richness of winning a headquarters relocation. And I can just simply say why that is such a trophy is when a company brings their headquarters to your community, your state, at the end of the day, it's having that C-suite. It's having the group that's invested locally. It's having the C-suite that drops anchor and creates this rich network. And it's also that C-suite that when it comes to making other expansion decisions, that's typically made at the home headquarters. And so we will continue to focus. And I can just simply say, more recently, we have had significant success with recruiting California companies and a couple of companies in the Northeast. And just really since January 1st of this year, that we've seen a real pickup in opportunities there. Rural development, again, this is not going to impact this community of listeners, but I can just simply say this is Governor Lee's number one initiative, and that is to make sure that the 80 counties that we deem rural, we have products, programs, and initiatives to make sure that we take care of those rural communities. Statistically speaking, about 40% of our projects that we locate are located in the rural communities. At the same time, you may have the greatest workforce, the greatest, largest pool of PhDs. And if your community is an hour from the closest interstate, no matter what that community does, it's virtually impossible to have advanced manufacturing locate, knowing that the third largest cost is going to be transportation of raw materials in to that plant and then transportation of finished goods out. So we try to think of creative ways to make sure that these rural counties are able to find their level of prosperity. Launch Tennessee, this is part of our portfolio, and this is to certainly foster the early stage startup communities. And so while Launch Tennessee has had some success and we continue, Van Tucker is our CEO at Launch Tennessee. We continue to focus on these initiatives. I can just simply say the greatest startup global brand happens to be a company called FedEx over in Memphis. And so when I think of startups, I realize that statistically the numbers are always stacked against those entrepreneurs. But at the end of the day, our job is to create an atmosphere and create resources to make sure that we have our share.
Yeah.